everybody, welcome to my first video. I'm so excited. I just want to let you know that I filmed this like 4 times already because every time I filmed it, it was like an hour and a half long. And I'm like, holy hell, how do I keep making this so long? It's ridiculous. So nonetheless, I don't have some long drawn out intro. I just want to say if you clicked on this video, thank you. I appreciate you. If you subscribe and like and comment, thank you again from the bottom of my heart. It's free for you, but it helps me out a ton because I am super new to this. This is literally my first video and I just really enjoy this. So I hope that you guys enjoy it just as much, but either way, let me know. Anyways, I'm going to get right into it like I said, but I do want to say if you don't know anything about me and you didn't see my first video, my name is Jen and I just did a 10-year prison sentence in the state of Florida. It was in the roughest prison, Lowell Correctional in Ocala, the 3rd roughest in the United States of America behind Texas and California. And, you know, it was, of course, it was known to me that I was in prison, but I did not realize how many of the women that I was in there with were, you know, on Snapped, Killer Women, and all of these shows until I got home and started researching. So the first one I'm going to talk about today actually has a pretty heinous, crazy crime. It does involve children, so, you know, if you have little ones around or something like that, you know, probably excuse them. But nonetheless, I'm going to tell the story because to me, she was pretty normal, a little socially awkward, but pretty normal. And then like I get home and I see this on TV and I'm like, oh my God, I slept next to her every day. I worked with her in education every day. Whoa. So, but it did explain some of the ways that she has and some of the reasons that she is the way she is. So let's get into it. I'm going to talk about someone named Leslie Demeniuk. Now, Leslie Demeniuk was born in 1969 in Charlottesville, Virginia. Her mom and dad, John and Catherine Ewing, were really great parents, y'all. They were like the wholesome, all-American, traditional, just really good family. Like the ones you look at and you're like, dang, they have just like a really good, well-rounded family. And, you know, people wanted that. That was what people strived for. What they had was what people strived for. And Leslie was the first girl. They were actually going to have 2 other girls after Leslie, totaling in 3 girls. And Leslie was the oldest. Now, Leslie definitely had the old syndrome, like the oldest kid. You know, the eldest kid is always like very meticulous and organized, almost like a second mommy. And Leslie was all of that, right? But shortly after she was born and before her 2 sisters were born, they actually moved to Maryland. So Leslie, her mom and dad, who are John and Catherine, moved to Maryland, and that's pretty much where she grew up and where her sisters were born. Now, Leslie loved animals. She was just really kind-hearted. She was loving and popular, and like by all accounts, she was a really great kid. There are no signs that she could ever do anything heinous to anyone.
Pretty normal family relationship. Leslie was always very intelligent, even in the 1st grade.
Very kind to others, loved animals. She was, she had her brownies and Girl Scouts and lived a very normal, you know, child's life, I think.
She was raised in a very nurturing environment. Her mother and father were very caring.
The only thing that was a little off about Leslie was that she was a little socially awkward. And don't get me wrong, like she was still popular, she was still well-liked, and she was very well-rounded. But it was kind of like she would have fallen somewhere like on an autism spectrum, in my opinion. Guys, this was never diagnosed. This was never like talked about. This is my personal opinion from interacting with her for almost a decade in prison, and also like from some things that were said by her family. I'm not saying that she was on the autism spectrum, but I'm just trying to give you guys like a mindset to put yourself in order to understand what her personality was like. And even when you watch some of these clips of her that I'm going to let you guys see, you can tell that she like comes off a little cold and calculated and just very matter of fact. But that is because Leslie does not have a very good emotional attachment or gauge. She doesn't express emotion very well. All of her words and sentences are like very like measured and uniform. And that comes off as like cold and calculated and narcissistic when in reality it's a part of being socially awkward and falling somewhere on an autism spectrum to the point that you can't really like express and show and, you know, like even handle emotion. Nonetheless, Leslie was a good, kind-hearted person. For the most part, everyone loved her. She was well-rounded, and nobody had anything negative to say about her at all. However, when she was 12, her parents did decide to get a divorce. Now, at this time, Leslie did want to go ahead and stay with her father, not because she had any issues with her mom or anything like that. Everything was great, but she wanted to stay in a certain school, and it just happened to be closer to her father's house and in that district. So they went ahead and, they knew very early on, they said even in the first grade, that they knew Leslie was just a smart kid. She was like very much an overachiever and very bright. So they gave her an IQ test when she was around 12 years old, right? She scored 117, which if you don't know anything about IQs, let me give you a frame of reference. 120 to 129 is above, it's like very superior, it's above average. 130 to 139 is like going into superior and like almost genius realm, right? So Leslie was 117 as a preteen. I mean, that was before she had like any real formal education, into any advanced stages. This was just like basic elementary school, middle school stuff that she had. But she was just that smart to where she was in the very superior, like above average scope already. Like she was already that smart, y'all. So they knew that, okay, if she's asking to stay in this school and she wants to live with her dad, she doesn't get in trouble, let's let her do so. So now her mom, Catherine, is with her two sisters, and her dad, John, is with Leslie. So at this point, Leslie is going into high school, and, they said that they, as in her parents, said she started dibbling and dabbling a little bit in like alcohol and some drugs. Now, Leslie, by her own admission, said that she experimented in some street drugs and some, heavier drugs and things like marijuana and stuff like that in high school. It wasn't anything that was like major or out of control, but her mom said that they did keep an eye on her, as they did all of their girls, and they just wanted to make sure it didn't get out of hand. Now, at this point, Leslie's classmates have said that she was popular, she was well-liked, well-rounded. Once again, she was not classified as promiscuous, but she was definitely flirty. And being that she was flirty, of course, the boys in high school, loved her. So she was showing these signs now of wanting to do a little bit of, the wrong thing, living on the edge, seeking an adrenaline rush. I'm just trying to get you guys in the mindset of somebody that is looking for the next rush, for the next high, because Leslie was definitely said to get bored with things very easily. Bored, burnt out, she does it, she achieves it, she masters it. She's done with it. And I want you guys to get that into your mind when thinking about her personality, because that is also going to play into what happens later on with her crime, right? So Leslie graduates from high school. Everything is good. Her parents have now remarried. They are both happily remarried, but everyone is still getting along. This is like, even at this point, this is still a very wholesome group. I don't know, but these parents just seem great to me. And the step parents as well. I don't know, everyone's just happy and blended and extended and awesome. So nonetheless, Leslie carries on and graduates from high school. She graduates with very good grades. Even though she was partying and drinking and dabbling in these things, she graduates with excellent grades. At this point, Leslie has graduated with good grades, and she decides she wants to study art and French in Belgium. So her parents are like, okay, this could really go somewhere. Go for it. So she goes overseas to Belgium for 6 months, y'all, and she studies art and French. And guess what? True to form, she masters it. She does awesome. But like I said before, she burnt out. She didn't burn out from doing it too long, because 6 months is not a long time. She just got bored. So when she came back to the United States, she was like, you know what? This just isn't the path for me. So guys, Leslie comes back from Belgium, and after studying art and French for 6 months and seeming to have a very promising career and future, she tells her parents that she's not interested anymore and that she doesn't want to do it. And like I told you guys before, this is going to become a pattern for Leslie. She seems to do things, achieve them, and then be done with them. It's like there are so many points that you guys will see in her life when she could have just stayed the course and been super successful, but instead she decides to go in a whole nother direction for like no apparent reason and just start something new. And then once again, not finish that either. So this is what happens with Leslie at this point, right? So Leslie decides when she gets back to enroll in Loyola College. Now, she enrolls in Loyola College. She is there for a year. She is doing that. But she is still, and this is by her own admission, having many sexual encounters with men, many nights of alcohol and drug experimentation. It doesn't ever state, or she doesn't ever admit that it got to the point of abuse, but there was a lot of recreational use of some pretty heavy drugs, right? And she was doing this throughout the year and still having all these relationships with men because she always needed something to feed her and stimulate her and give her that next rush and that next high, right? So that's what she was doing. She did pretty well at school. She actually did. But after a year, guess what happened? You guys guessed it. She dropped out. She was done. She was done. She went to Loyola. She came, she saw, she conquered. She was done with it. And now she says, you know what? I'm 25, because she's 25 at this point, y'all. And I'm just like over it. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my dad's. Now her dad has moved from Maryland to Ponte Vedra Beach in Jacksonville, Florida. Now, Ponte Vedra Beach is like an area, it's like on the beach outskirts of Jacksonville, and it's very uppity, very nice. A lot of rich people live there. It's just a really, really nice area. And there's a subdivision within that area called Sawgrass. And there's like, those are like all the tennis moms that are driving their Suburbans or their, Audis and their SUVs and are playing tennis every day while their kids are at school. And then they're all picking them up and the dads are playing golf on the weekends and whatever. Like, it's that type of community, and they're very, very like wealthy. So the dad lives there, and as I've already told you guys, this is like the super extended Brady Bunch family. So I don't know how like the whole family ended up in Ponte Vedra, but remember, y'all, they were all living in Maryland. The dad is living in Ponte Vedra, and then come to find out the mom is living in Ponte Vedra as well. So I don't know who went there first, but the super wholesome extended Brady Bunch is now living in Ponte Vedra, all of them. The mom with her new husband, the dad with his new wife, and they're all there and everyone gets along, and it's like great. So, and I don't mean anything bad when I say like the Brady Bunch, like they are just a really well-rounded, very good family that all seem to communicate and get along, and it's awesome. So, nonetheless, Leslie decides she's going to go back to her dad's. So she does. She goes back at 25 years old and lives with her dad in Ponte Vedra. Now, for the most part, everyone's pretty excited because now their family's all in Ponte Vedra. But they are kind of wondering, like, you're 25 at this point, and when are you going to like settle into a career path? Because you're way too smart, Leslie, and you're an overachiever, but like you're 25 and you haven't really finished anything. You've started a whole bunch of things, been successful at them, but you haven't finished anything. So what's going on? And now they're starting to get a little, like a little weird. Remember, she had just moved there, so she wants to get out and do something. So she decides to go to a place called Pete's Bar, and she goes there, and that night, she meets a 22-year-old naval officer. Now, y'all remember she's 25, which is not a big age difference, but it's just something I want to mention because at 22, he's a naval officer. He's like just starting his life, trying to take off. And Leslie's 25 and already lived in other countries and studied and like done a lot, but not really accomplished anything like full circle, right? So she meets him, and this is what she had to say about him.
Like a good person, and he had nice manners, so, I was interested.
Now, it's worth noting, because remember when I told you guys about her demeanor and like maybe she should have been tested for autism so they could understand how she expresses herself a little more. You guys saw in that video, right? She's like, he was very kind, he was very kind, he was very nice, and I was interested.
I thought that I might be pregnant, so I told him before he left. well, I think I might be pregnant.
Now, for the most part, I know if myself or like one of my girlfriends met somebody to the point that they were falling in love, they would be like, oh my God, girl, yes, I was in love, da 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 da. Even if they were talking about it after the fact and no longer together, when they're talking about that moment, they're going to talk about it with a lot of emotion. But Leslie says he was very kind, he had good manners, he was nice, and I was interested. And that's it. Very flat, unemotional, and kind of cold, right? And that's just how she is. And that's why I keep saying throughout this that maybe they should have looked into some kind of, autism spectrum or something like that, instead of just ruling her out as a cold, calculated narcissist, because that is going to play a role in the jury's verdict. But we'll get there. Okay, so let's stay where we're at. She meets Tommy. Her and Tommy fall in love. It's a whirlwind. I mean, they are like literally just head over heels for each other within a few months, okay? So it is a very fast, true to form, just like always. She dives in head first, goes 100 miles an hour with it, and, just like every other time, within a few months, she thinks she's pregnant. Now, mind y'all, they've only been dating a few months, but she thinks she's pregnant, and he is actually going out to sea for 6 months. He's going to be deployed for 6 months. So she tells him, hey, I think I'm pregnant, but I don't know yet. And I'm not really sure why she didn't just get a test right then when he was still face to face with her. Like, I don't really understand that. But nonetheless, she didn't. And she decided to wait a little while longer. Maybe she did take a test and it was too early to actually detect. I'm not really sure. But for whatever reason, at that point, there wasn't any testing done. So he goes ahead and he deploys and he's gone. While he's gone, I guess now maybe it's, far enough along in the pregnancy where she can take a test, or whatever the reason was for not taking it, now she does take it. And when she takes it, she's pregnant. She finds out that yes, she is indeed pregnant, and everyone's over the moon about it. They're really happy. It's great. Like, nobody's upset about it. And now her family's thinking like, okay, her life took a turn from, this art guru and this art fanatic and wanting to go overseas and just learn about the world and all this stuff, to a mom, like a family mom, a stay-at-home mom, the wife of a naval officer who's going to raise her kids with him. And they're going to live forever and happily ever after with a white picket fence. And her parents are okay with that as long as she's happy, healthy, and good. So no one has an issue. The only issue is that they are pretty conservative in their, their faith and all of the religious aspects of their life. They're not Bible thumpers in the sense of the word, but they do feel like at this point, she should probably get married. And she agrees, and so does Tommy. So they get married. And, Leslie is not very, and I'm saying this from my prison sentence, from that standpoint, I've never seen her to be very girly or frilly or, feminine or dainty. She's kind of more tomboyish, and her hygiene is excellent. She does wear a little bit of makeup, and she does take care of herself physically, but she's just not frilly, So they did not have a wedding. They went right down to the courthouse and they got married in that way. And 2 months after they got married at the courthouse by just signing the papers, Leslie gave birth to 2 healthy little boys, Johnny and Jamie Demeniuk. Now, this was like crazy because remember, Leslie didn't have any other kids, and this was not, her lifelong goal was not like to be a stay-at-home mommy. So to now all of a sudden have not 1 child, but two little twin boys was like, whoa. But guess what? She was happy. She was happy. Tommy was happy, and everybody was happy. Everybody was good. Nothing was crazy. It was just a really nice moment. The boys were healthy, and Johnny and Jamie, Leslie and Tommy all went home, and they stayed in a house together. She's not any longer living at her father's. And they have their own little home, their own little life, and life is good, there's nothing going on that's bad. So, if only things could have stayed that way, right? Okay, now, Tommy continues to go on deployment. While Tommy's on deployment, Leslie is raising Johnny and Jamie, and her two little boys are happy. You know, everybody says she was just so patient, so loving. Remember, Leslie's very intelligent. She was very creative. She would come up with little projects and little experiments and there is literally so much footage of Leslie just doing all kinds of creative and interactive things with her boys where she just was so hands-on. She was a real hands-on mom. She was never absent or void. She was a hands-on mom that loved to teach and loved to be with her boys, and never did she seem aggravated or upset or overwhelmed even. And let me tell you, I mean, I didn't raise my son from infancy because obviously you guys know I was in prison. So I gave birth incarcerated. But even now when I got home and he's 9 years old, I mean, it's exhausting a whole day with your children because it's always go. And while it's the most rewarding gift in the world, to have two of those little gifts at the same time you think at some point in time she'd have to get tired, but they said she never did. She was always happy, and she was always interactive, and she was always hands-on, and she was always just a good, patient, and loving mother. While Tommy is continuously being deployed, Leslie's getting a little bored. So, even though Leslie was a great mother, and everybody says that she was just so doting and hands-on and patient and loving, I guess that somewhere inside she felt empty because she decided to take online classes at the local community college while raising her two boys, which is totally cool. Props to that. Like, nothing wrong with it at all. She was actually awarded Student of the Year. So, after doing that and completing those classes, she was done because, you know, she, like every other time, set out to do this, got Student of the Year. It was awesome, and she was done with it. That was it. Didn't really go any further than that, but her marriage was starting to crumble. It was starting to fail miserably, y'all. And, you know, it was because that element of Tommy, because remember, Leslie has a hard time expressing emotion, and Tommy not being there made the element of Tommy seem to disappear. So Tommy was gone for months at a time with his Navy job. Like, that's his job. That's how he supports all three of them, Leslie and the two boys. Like, that's how he supports them. So of course he has to work, and he doesn't get to pick and choose. It's not how it works in the Navy. So he's gone, and she's aggravated. She's getting upset.
Tried his best, and he was a good father, and he did everything he knew how to try to make things right. When he came back, everybody had to readjust. He had a hard time adjusting to the boys, and he had a hard time adjusting to it as a family unit.
She said he really did try his best, but she said that every time he came back, he had a really hard time reintegrating to their schedule, to Leslie and to the boys. He had a really hard time, according to Leslie, finding his place in that unit, in that routine, in that schedule, and in the life of Leslie and the two boys. Now, I'm going to interject right here and say, I don't believe that. I think Leslie is saying that, but I do not believe that, and I'm going to tell you why. Remember how I told you about the whole autism spectrum, and a lot of the signs of autism is involve like having difficulty changing a routine and breaking a pattern, right? I watched Leslie for almost 10 years take a shower every morning at the exact same time because she would set her alarm for the exact same amount of minutes, put her makeup on sitting in the exact same position every single day, do the exact same routine, the exact same amount of stirs of coffee, the exact same number of packets of sugar every single day. And if anything, I mean anything broke that routine, you could visibly see the freak out in Leslie's face, right? Leslie did not like anything to come into her bubble, even physically. One time, just as a joke, we decided to go try to give Leslie a hug on Christmas and be like, hey, Merry Christmas, because women are fairly nice to each other in there on holidays and try to uplift each other, right? The sheer fact of Leslie being touched by somebody else, I mean, even just putting their hands on him, freaks her out. It freaks her out, y'all. I mean, she stiffens up and she looks at you and she moves very slowly and like freakishly. And it's like, Leslie, calm down. Like, we were just joking. You know what I mean? Like, don't tap her. If you tap in prison, if people didn't know her and they were like new to the prison, we would try to like let them, you try to help each other in prison and let the other newer people know what not to do with certain inmates. But sometimes, you know, you can't help everybody. And if someone would tap her, you would very frequently catch Leslie giving him a lecture and saying, listen, if you need to talk to me, if you need to approach me, if you need to ask me anything, it's cool, but you need to say it and verbalize it. Don't touch me. And if I have earphones in, because like she would, you know, in prison, you often put in music when you're doing your makeup in the morning, or if like you're sitting on your bed hanging out. She would say, wave something like in front of my face to get my attention, but do not tap me or touch me, because she just did not like that. So, and like I said, that's going to play a role later on and we'll get there. So moving right along. So she's now just totally saying that he's having a really hard time fitting into the family unit. And even though I don't believe it, there's no proof of that. That's just what she's saying. She said that she tried and she told him, listen, we need to fix this. We need to talk. We need to communicate. You need to somehow do something. But he is literally a naval officer who has to be deployed to go to work and make money so they can survive. I don't really know at this point what somebody as smart as she is expected for him to do other than just get a whole career change, right? So she's saying she begged him, but like, I don't really understand. Maybe y'all can clue me in, like, what did she expect he was going to even be able to do? Let's say he wanted to do something different. Like, it would still take time. It wasn't going to be an immediate thing. He wasn't like, it's not like she could complain about it and say, oh, you're not home enough and, you know, we don't talk enough and you need to fix it. And he was just going to poof, next morning be able to change his whole life. Like, even if he put in for another job, it's still going to take time. So anyways, nonetheless, she said that she still was begging him, and she actually said this right here.
I had said to him several times, you know, I need you to be here. I need to communicate with you, and, you know, you're not communicating with me, and please, let's do something about this.
So after she told him that, she said that at this point he was deployed once again and he was no longer responding to her and he was no longer communicating. And she said she begged him one last time, please talk to me, please communicate with me. But she said she got nothing in return. So, you know, because she's got that cold, calculated thing about her, everything's very matter of fact, very black and white. She sits down at her computer and she, almost 3 years later, types up that she is filing for divorce and she is done with Tommy, hits the send button and sends the email to Tommy that she is filing for divorce and it is over. Tommy is out at sea, has these two beautiful little boys with Leslie. They've almost been married now for, you know, a couple years. They've known each other for about 3. And imagine him being out at sea deployed and getting this email, like, you know, there's trouble, but like, now I'm getting an email saying when I get home, I'm not going to come home to my family. I'm going to come home to an empty house and divorce papers. Like, that is really cold to me. And, you know, I can't speak on their relationship. Maybe it was deserved, but like, dang, man, you're not like fighting for our country. And then you get this email and it's like, ugh. Like, no matter how on the outs they were, it still had to hurt and be heartbreaking for him to get that out there alone. You know what I mean? So Tommy gets the email and he doesn't contest anything. He doesn't argue. He doesn't try to fix it. He doesn't try to stay. It's just over. Just in Leslie's nature, you know, she came, she saw, and she conquered once again. And then she left, you know, all the pieces behind and found something new. Something exciting. She needs the newness, remember, y'all. So, true to form, she meets Antonio Ortiz. This is 9 months after she initially sent that email to Tommy saying that she was going to file for divorce. They are not officially divorced yet, but she meets Antonio Ortiz, who is a sports photographer, and by all accounts, just a nice, cool guy, right? Her and Antonio, just like her and Tommy, meet, fall in love, and are in a whirlwind romance that is very passionate and intense, just like Tommy's was, very fast. Like, within a few months, they're at that I love you. This is the best thing that ever happened in my life point. And he said that it was just a really fast, intense, passionate relationship.
We immediately started a relationship as soon as we met. We fell in love, and we were together every day since the day we met, pretty much.
He was always very affectionate, and he loved the boys. The boys loved him.
Do you guys see how she's like flat again? Like there's never any, you know, mind you, Antonio is the person that she was with when all of this crime happened and when she actually went away. She shouldn't have any ill will or bad feelings towards him. They never even like really broke up. But it's just always like super flat when she talks about anything. And even then she's just like, yep, he was nice and everything was good and da 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 da. It's like very robotic, and that's why I keep saying like they really needed to check that out instead of just saying what they did in court at the end, because this is obviously just part of her personality and part of the way she's wired. It's not anything personal or bad. It's just who she is and how she was born. So anyways, Antonio said that since the first day they met, literally the first day they met, they were in a relationship, in love, and never spent a day apart after that. And of course they didn't, because Leslie was an intense whirlwind kind of gal. Like that's what she was. That's what she did. This is exactly her character. So of course it was this crazy, passionate notebook kind of story, right? But now the court proceedings are starting to go further and are starting to advance more, and Leslie is getting increasingly depressed. She is just, even though she initiated this divorce, becoming really upset, depressed, down, can't sleep, can't eat. It's just bad, and she doesn't know what to do. And the main reason why there was so much like bitterness and the biggest point of contention in this legal dispute and in this divorce was the custody battle. They couldn't agree on custody. Now, to be fair, Tommy didn't want to take the kids away from Leslie. He didn't want any more than half and half. He wanted 50-50 custody, and Leslie did not want that. No one ever said why Leslie didn't want that. Not even herself, never in open court. Nobody ever could explain why she didn't want that, but it just caused her serious anxiety to think that she was going to have to split her time with Tommy and give the boys over for 50% of the time. It's just not something that she was comfortable with.
Tommy and Leslie were very civil with each other. Everything was great. He just wanted the boys as well.
I'm having trouble sleeping, feeling depressed and anxious. And I said, let me go see my primary care physician.
But I'm just telling you guys personally, and only personally, from my point of view, I just really feel like, because that would mean that she would have to let Tommy into her bubble, and she would have to share some of the power and control with somebody else, and that would disrupt her little like routine and her cycle of life. And that's all I think it was. I think that just caused her major anxiety. So nonetheless, everything just continued to move along in court, and she couldn't take it anymore at this point. So she decided to call a local health clinic. Because she calls a clinic and she says she needs to see the doctor, but when she gets to the clinic, she doesn't see the doctor. Actually sees a nurse practitioner, a male nurse practitioner, and she explains to him that she has terrible anxiety, that the thought of basically having to share control of the boys and custody of them is driving her nuts, and she can't sleep, she can't eat, and she's very down. So he gives her samples of an antidepressant called Zoloft and gives her a prescription for an anti-anxiety medication called Xanax. I'm sure most of you are familiar with both of those drugs, so I'm not going to go too much into explaining them. She went home, she took the Zoloft, she took the Xanax, and within a couple days, her lips were swollen. She had hives everywhere. She was just in a bad condition. She was not sleeping still, and she was starting to hallucinate and lose her memory, which was like really crazy because Leslie has no health problems, no mental issues, nothing like that. So, at this point, she's like, what the hell is going on?
When I started taking the Zoloft, I had this like basically uncontrollable urge to drink.
Y'all, this is where it starts to get sketchy and foggy and funky, and this is where you can clearly tell, this is the point in time right here where everything starts to go left, and you can just watch it happening in slow motion. And hindsight is 20/20, but dang man, all this family full of smart, loving people, and nobody could see this unfolding in front of their eyes because it starts right here right now, okay? Okay. Leslie calls and tells the nurse practitioner, I have hives, my lips are swollen, I am not sleeping, I'm losing my memory, what the hell? This man, for lack of the word that I really want to use, as a licensed medical professional, decides to tell Leslie to just continue taking her medication, that it will get into her system within 4 weeks and her body will become accustomed to it, which they do say that psychotropic medications that you take for mental health do sometimes take up to 30 days to get into your system and be effective. In other words, work. But for whatever freaking reason, because it pisses me off, this man tells her to keep on taking the medication and it's okay. Her body will get used to it in 30 days and let's just keep it moving. So she does, she continues to take her medication because that's what a medical professional has told her to do. And a couple days after this, she's taking it and now she starts hallucinating. And I mean hallucinating bad. Now her family is noticing she's saying weird things, she's making weird statements, she's acting weird, she's losing her memory really, really bad. And she has developed this uncontrollable urge to drink, y'all. Like she's drinking all the time, all day long. These are literally things that Leslie never did prior to taking these meds. She's now 2 weeks into it and her family has watched her become a raging alcoholic, lose her memory, hallucinate out of this world, and start talking crazy. Y'all, let me tell you something. If I wake up and my lips are swollen, I'm losing my memory, I'm hallucinating, and I become an alcoholic overnight, and I don't even drink like that because I don't, and apparently neither did she except in high school, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to stop doing whatever the hell made me start doing this overnight. And if I don't, because I don't have enough sense to, and I'm like that out there, you best believe if there's anybody close to me, which there are, that family member is going to say, hell no, put that stuff up, put that stuff away, let it go. We're going somewhere else. Because you can clearly see what the connection is. Like, this part just pisses me off. Now, at this point in time, Leslie is living with her father again. She decides to take the boys, move out of the home that she was sharing with Tommy, even though he's not there, he's been, out at work. And she decides to go ahead and move in with her father and her stepmother because her dad was remarried. And she moves in to their home in Ponte Vedra in Sawgrass, just basically for financial support, emotional support, help with the boys, even though she really didn't need it, and just to get a fresh start.
I saw her as the most loving mother I had experienced with twin boys, patient and creative.
So on one of these particular days, after she has been taking these medications for a few weeks now, Antonio, her new boyfriend, decides to come over, and he says that he found her very strangely laying in the bed, eyes rolling in the back of her head, with a gun laying next to her, and her saying that she was going to kill herself. She couldn't take it anymore.
I found her one afternoon just laid out in her bed and her eyes were rolling back and it looked like she was having a seizure. That's when she told me that she had first pulled out the gun and was thinking of killing herself.
Now, this gun, let me just give you guys a little backstory on it. This gun was the gun that her father gave her. It was a .357 Magnum, and her father gave it to her for protection purposes to have at her home while Tommy was out deployed and out work, out at sea, when she was home alone with the boys. So when she moved back in with her father, she brought this gun with her. And this gun, for the boys' protection, which is so ironic that that's what ended up killing them, but for their protection, Leslie hid the gun in her father's closet, not in her room, not in the boys' room, but in her father's closet, tucked way up high on a shelf in a box, right? But on this particular day, when Antonio came to see her, the gun was on the bed and she was sprawled out next to it with her eyes rolling in the back of her head, saying she wanted to kill herself. And Antonio was seriously alarmed at this point because now she's displaying things that she's never done, and all of a sudden, 2 weeks after taking these medications, she's wanting to kill herself. When is enough going to really be enough for somebody to say something? Nonetheless, Leslie is awarded custody of the boys. The court decides to rule in her favor. She gets 100% full physical custody of the boys, which in hindsight, I mean, really should have been a win for her. She should have been ecstatic because that's what she wanted. Tommy did have visitation rights and he did get the boys from time to time, but particularly because of his schedule and, you know, just her being the primary caregiver, they were awarded to Leslie 100% with visitation provided to the father, Tommy Demeniuk, okay? So, she should have been ecstatic, but for whatever reason, she wasn't. It's almost like it got worse when the divorce was finalized, and no one really knows why, because she initiated all this crap, right? So, she really kind of tailspins now. Okay, y'all, so now, despite this favorable divorce outcome and everything that Leslie should be happy about, she's still not happy. And one day, she walks into her father's room, takes the gun down from the closet, and holds it to her head and is about to kill herself. But instead of killing herself, she actually calls Antonio.
I had gone into the closet and got the gun. I was going to shoot myself. And I was standing in the closet holding the gun when I realized what I was going to do.
And tells him what she was about to do. He rushes over and immediately asks her, what the hell is going on? This is not the woman I fell in love with. Like, where is Leslie? And are you sure you're taking these medications correctly and you're not abusing them because you're drinking a lot? And remember, you used to have those problems back in high school and college, right? So, of course, this infuriates Leslie because now you're accusing her of one of two things. Either one, being incapable of reading a prescription bottle and understanding the directions, which is really challenging her intellect and making her feel like, what the hell, buddy? You know I have a super high IQ and I'm very intelligent, so that's an insult. Or the second thing, which is you know what the bottle says, but you're abusing the medications purposely, which is really pissing her off because at this point she's already having an uncontrollable urge to drink, which she's blaming on the Zoloft, and in my opinion it's probably accurate because she was not drinking by anyone's account before she started taking the Zoloft. So there has to be some correlation, right? But anyways, she's like, this is enough. And he's like, this is enough. We have to go and we have to talk to the doctor because this is out of control. So she calls the office, but unfortunately, like, this is the world's worst clinic, y'all. Please never go there. I have to find out what the place is called because this is like the worst place ever. So she calls and the clinic says, I'm sorry, but the doctor is booked for 3 weeks solid. So you're going to have to either wait the 3 weeks or see the same nurse practitioner. And of course, she can't wait 3 weeks. This lady's on the verge of killing herself, right? So she decides, okay, I'll see the nurse practitioner or whatever. And she sees the nurse practitioner. And now remember, y'all, she's already spoken to him once and told him that her lips were swollen, that she couldn't sleep, and that she was losing her memory. Now she's going back to see him and she's telling him, hey, I'm about to kill myself. I'm having an uncontrollable urge to drink, which is basically making me an alcoholic. And I just like cannot function this way. Please help, right? So he tells her, okay, no worries. Stop the Zoloft. Just stop it. And I'm going to put you on Paxil, which is another antidepressant. And she's like, wait a minute, aren't I supposed to like wean off of this? And
Aren't you supposed to wean off of them, or wean off and then wean on or something? And he said, no, just stop taking the Zoloft and start taking the Paxil.
And she also told them that she had suicidal thoughts. And
you know, and he's like, no, you haven't been taking it long enough. It's cool. Just like stop it cold turkey and take the Paxil. Now, she thinks this is a little odd because, you know, most of us know with certain medications, you do have to wean off of them. But she's like, okay, you're the professional once again. Why we're trusting this guy, I don't know. But like, she's trusting this guy once again. So she goes, she gets the prescription for Paxil and she starts taking it. This is where things get really bad, y'all. But when she leaves that office, she takes Paxil and the Xanax, and she's still drinking for the next 3 days straight, okay? This is what her mom had to say. So March 16th, 2001, she has a horrible fight with Antonio. He is basically accusing her of not taking the medication correctly or drinking too much or just something being wrong, that she is contributing somehow to the problem. So she is livid. She's already been accused of, not being able to take the medication correctly because she doesn't understand the label. She's already been accused of abusing the medication, and she's mad. She's infuriated, right? So she hauls off and slaps Antonio across the face. I mean, she slaps Antonio so hard that it literally stunned him. And this was very out of character. Leslie had never been violent towards anyone, even in her domestic relationships. Never had she ever hurt any of her exes or any family members, okay? It wasn't in her nature to be violent, but she did that, and he got mad and he left. Now, Leslie felt horrible, so the next day, March 17th, 2001, the unthinkable happens, okay? Leslie starts that day out thinking, okay, I'm fighting with Antonio, but I love Antonio and I want to fix this. So she calls him and she tells him that. And he agrees. He loves her too and he wants to fix it. And he knows that this is not her character and something else is going on. And they apologize and they decide to meet up that night and talk about it, okay? That was around 3:40. Around 3:45, 3:50, Leslie calls Tommy Demeniuk, the twin boys' father, and says, Tommy, I need you to watch the boys tonight because I have to go meet Antonio and it's very important, please. And he says no. With no regard, with no effort, with no, deliberation in his mind, just flat out no. And this sends her into a fit of rage. Because remember what I told y'all about Leslie. When her world is disrupted, when her plans are destroyed, when there is a monkey wrench thrown into whatever she has set her mind to, Leslie freaks out. She does not cope with it well, and she flew into a fit of rage. And her being as impulsive as she has shown to be throughout this entire story and throughout her entire life, Leslie hangs up that phone with Tommy. Leslie does the unthinkable. Leslie walks into her father's room, gets the gun out of the closet off the top shelf, loads it full 6 rounds of ammunition, walks out through her father's room into the children's room where they are watching Scooby-Doo. She takes the gun and puts it point blank range to the first baby boy's head. Not to the back of his head, not to the side of his head, but to his forehead. So he is looking at her, and possibly the other baby boy is looking at her as well. And I say baby boys because they did not specify which one was shot first. I do apologize. However, she put the gun point blank to the first baby boy's forehead and pulls the trigger as the other one is right there. When she pulls the trigger, of course, it's a .357 Magnum. His brain explodes all over her, all over the place, all over the other little brother. And it terrifies him because at this point, when these baby boys are seeing that gun being held to one of their foreheads, they don't know what that is. Can you imagine looking into your children's eyes as you do that and they don't even know what's about to happen? That's some cold S, y'all. So anyways, she pulls the trigger and his brain explodes. The other little baby boy flees in a panic and tries to run for his life. His little 4-year-old, bless his heart, tried to save his own life and thought he could outrun his mom, who for the last 4 years has loved him unconditionally. He runs into the hallway. She shoots at him and she misses, hitting the wall. She runs a little faster, catches up to him, grabs him, tackles him, pins him down, puts the gun again to the side of his head, pulls the trigger, and his brain explodes as well. He is dead on impact, and both of the boys are dead instantaneously when she shoots them. She now calls Antonio and says, Antonio, I shot the boys. I killed the boys. Antonio does not know at this point if this has really happened or not, because remember, Leslie has been going through some things and she's been hallucinating and he doesn't know. So he tries to get a little clarity, but the phone seems to have been dropped, disconnected or something. She's just not responding. So he gets in his car and he flies over to her father's house. And he said immediately when he walked in, he could smell gunpowder. And he knew that at the very least, a gun had been shot off, and he was just hoping that it was not what she said. But when he walks in the room, he sees one of the baby boys laying dead on the floor, one of the baby boys laying dead in the bed, and Leslie covered with blood and brain matter, skull fragments and flesh all over her, covered up to about midway on her body with the covers, and just holding the gun in the bed with her eyes closed. He immediately calls the police.
She just shot her 2 kids. Who just shot? Her mom, the mom. Damn it, get over here. I must sleep with you now. Oh my God, oh my God. She killed him. She killed him.
One detective asks her, Miss Demeniuk, hey, what happened? What's going on? And she's not responding, but finally he says it again, and she opens her eyes and she says, I shot my babies. I killed my babies. What have I done? So at this point, you know, they see, oh my God, she's like full blown confessing. So we need to like record as much as we can. So they put her in an ambulance to take her to the hospital. And as they are on the ambulance ride, they are recording everything she's saying. And this is what she has said.
What do you think's wrong with you?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I'm going to my children. I'm going to hell. I'm going to hell.
She says that she really meant to kill herself. She don't know how it turned on to the boys. She claims over and over again that she has no recollection of it, and that the drugs that she was prescribed had to make her do this because she never even thought about harming her boys. She loved her boys. It was always herself that she wanted to kill.
Remember any of that day? I can tell you the bits and pieces that I do remember, but there's not a lot that I remember. I don't remember the day before, and I don't remember the day before that.
When they said the boys had been shot by their mother, it was a nightmare.
When I first came on the scene, I found out what happened. I knew right then, I knew why it happened. It could not have happened if it hadn't been for something else. And we know what that was. It was the antidepressants, the Paxil and the Zoloft.
And she repeated this over and over again, you know? And it's like, you kind of, once you see the full spectrum of the story, she never changes her story. So at the actual hospital, the detectives still have to do their job, even though this is, you know, a case that's open and shut. I mean, she's confessed several times. So they're literally scraping brain matter and blood and bone fragment and everything else off of her face for evidence because they have to. And as she sees one of the drops of blood, she begins to cry and she starts to state how she's going to hell. She's going to hell. What has she done? She's killed her babies. What has she done? And, you know, this is going to play a very important part in her defense later on. And now she is charged and booked on 2 counts of first-degree murder. They found that her blood alcohol level was 0.324, which is almost 4 times the legal limit. It's 0.08 here in Florida. And that she did have the Xanax and the Paxil in her system. And it wasn't really very much, you know, anything in that area as far as her taking it more than she should have or abusing it. It was really the levels that they were supposed to be at. So, you know, we just have to assume that it was a bad combination of everything and the alcohol just had her out of her mind. I cannot say in the state of Florida that the pharmaceutical company produced and manufactured a drug that made you kill somebody. Now, in the years since, Zoloft has been proven to have a serious connection with suicidal ideation. And that is just people that want to commit suicide and actually follow through with committing suicide. Now, it had nothing to do with Leslie's case, but it has been shown and proven to have a strong connection. So I just want to say that, but in 2001, this was not the case. People did not believe it, did not think it, and it was not heard of yet. So that is an interesting point. Now, because Leslie could not use what actually was going on and what she actually thought the problem was as a defense, they had to go with insanity. It was the only viable option. It was the only good choice for them that was closest to what happened. But in the state of Florida, to be found insane by law, you have to either not know what you were doing at the time, or you have to know what you were doing at the time, but not know that it was wrong. So you have to think it was okay. Leslie proved in the tape recordings that they used in court that she knew that both of those were not true. She knew what she was doing because she said, I killed my boys, I shot my boys, oh my God, and she said it on tape over and over. And she knew it was wrong because she said, what kind of person am I? I'm going to hell. What have I done? So both of those were out of the window. She could not use that as a defense, and her attorney still chose to use that as a defense. Not to mention the fact that the prosecutor brought in an expert witness who was a woman that was a psychologist for the prosecutor's office. And this woman stated that in many interviews with Leslie over the 5 years that she spent in the county jail fighting the case before she was actually sentenced, that she found Leslie to be perfectly sane, in her right mind, a narcissistic, cold, calculated, and controlling individual. Now, this is where I want to reflect back to what I told you guys about Leslie being on that autistic spectrum, right? I'm telling you, y'all, this lady, and I'm going to tell you some things about her in the jail that is just, she had to fall into that category somewhere. And if you're sitting in front of someone who you know murdered their 2 twin boys execution style at 4 years old with no freaking apparent motive, you're already going to feel a little weird and a little ill towards them. I know I did when I first met her, and I still have some feelings about that, but that's not what we're here for right now, okay? So I don't know that should have been entered into evidence, because this wasn't really something scientific. This was this lady's opinion based on the vibe she got from Leslie. And of course you're going to get that vibe. She's socially awkward as hell. That's how she is. So of course you're going to get that vibe from her, but I don't think that should have been entered into evidence. Now, Leslie was actually found guilty. Her defense didn't stand up in court at all. And I am not going to sit here and defend her, because I think that what she got found was just. I think she is guilty, and I think she should serve a punishment, absolutely. But my problem is this. While I think Leslie should have been found guilty and should be serving her sentence, I think that there are some other parties that should be held accountable here. Get this, y'all. You guys are going to be pissed off. You have to be, because I know I was. Okay, yes, Leslie's guilty, but remember that nurse practitioner that she called and spoke to on 2 different occasions, and then actually saw on 2 different occasions? He said she never said a word about wanting to commit suicide. He never heard that until court. I know that's a lie. I know it for a fact, and I'm going to tell you why. It doesn't even make sense. The first time she called, she said her lips were swollen and she was hallucinating and all of these things, and you told her stay on the medication. But the second time you saw her, she had already used those 2 instances in the beginning. The second time you saw her, you full-blown took her off of Zoloft. You said, hell no, take her off of Zoloft and put her on Paxil. Well, if she never told you she was suicidal, what was the reasons you took her off the Zoloft? Because you never gave one in court. You never gave a reason. This man, y'all, straight up lied and said he was never told about that, but he never gave a reason why he switched her from Zoloft to Paxil. So he's lying for obvious reasons. He doesn't want to be liable for not taking the situation seriously like he should have. And he should be liable. Leslie was found guilty and sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences. Concurrent sentences run side by side and at the same time. Consecutive sentences run one behind the other, which means she would have to serve a life sentence, die, come back to life, serve another life sentence, die, come back to life, and then she will be eligible for parole. In the state of Florida, life is just that, natural life. Whatever your life is, whether it's 1 year or 25 or 99, whatever your life's natural lifespan is, that's your life sentence. We don't have parole here, so there is no 25 to life here in Florida. Leslie was devastated. Obviously, her family was devastated. Everyone is a victim here, and I firmly believe that. The father of the twin boys, Tommy, never mentioned Leslie's name, never directed any anger or anything towards her in open court. He only told a very, very heartfelt story, and you know, it was all about the boys, and it was only about the boys, and he wanted to shine light on them and remember the victims instead of having it be all about Leslie and the pharmaceutical companies. Leslie, I want to say now, I have known her for 10 years because I was in prison with her. She never claims to be a mother. She does not celebrate Mother's Day. She will not talk about her case. She absolutely 100% says that she deserves no credit for being a good mother, even for the years that she was, because she ended up being a horrible mother. She will never talk about her case, though. She will not ever claim to, have any kind of motherly ties. And if someone mistakenly tells her Happy Mother's Day on Mother's Day, as most women do in prison, she will say very cold and flatly, I am not a mother and I never was. Now, that is her guilt. She is one of the only people to never have a life sentence and not have appealed her case. She has never put in any papers to appeal her case. She thinks her punishment is just and she takes it and she is okay with it. She has said that her life in prison is exactly what it is supposed to be because that is what she deserves. Her kids don't have a life and neither should she. She has stated that once her father passes away, she will end her existence in prison and take herself out of the situation that she is in. I know she loves her mother and her sisters, but I don't know much about them. I know that her father does visit her very regularly and is a big source of her support in every way. Now, Leslie is very well regarded in prison. As far as I know, she spent 5 years in the county, and so she has been in prison close to 20 years now, going towards 20 years. And as far as I know, she's only been to confinement, I think, one time. She's not a troublemaker, and I think that was arguing over a TV. In the 10 years I was there, I never saw her go to confinement. She is very well liked and very trusted by staff. She is known to many times, and I don't want to get anyone in trouble, so I'm going to word this very freely, very loosely, but there have been a lot of officers who are working that job and basically are working that job as a stepping stone to their career and working through school while they are a correctional officer. And it has been known on very many occasions, if they are not working at a busy post, to call upon Leslie and come help them with their schoolwork or have Leslie teach them whatever it is that they are studying at the time if they are confused. She is very knowledgeable. She's very high up in the echelons of the education world. She is very much responsible for helping hundreds of women get their GED in the state of Florida. She is a teacher and a certified ITA in the Department of Education, and she is certified by the state of Florida. She's incredibly intelligent and still using that gift, thank God, to help other women advance their life and help them get their GED so that when they can get out, they have a leg to stand on. But we cannot forget the horrible and heinous thing that she did. I know she doesn't forget because she never intends on even trying to get out of prison or fight her case. Even though I think that from her history and not having a history of any sort of violence or any kind of abuse, I think she stands a pretty good chance, if nothing else, to just hold the pharmaceutical company and possibly the health clinic responsible for not really investigating the claim that this was making her suicidal and eventually homicidal. And I think that, that is something that could be looked into with the right kind of defense. But unfortunately, she did not have that, and she does not care to look into that anymore. She wants to accept her punishment and just do what she needs to do now from here on forward. As far as I know, Antonio was never around. And between 2006 and 2012, when I got to prison, Antonio fell off because I never knew him to be around or hear her speak of him in any way. She is definitely still in contact with her father continuously. He visits her and they talk on the phone regularly. And pretty much, other than that, there's nothing else really to Leslie. She's very routine, very structured, very organized, and very OCD in prison, and very socially awkward still. So let me know what you guys think. I love y'all. Let me know what you think of my first video. It was kind of hella long for a first video, but I talk a lot. Sorry. I just want to say, from my point of view, I don't agree with what she did, but I do think there was more to it than want to say that I disagree, and I don't think it was her just being angry at Tommy and wanting to get back at him.
I loved my children more than anything. That despite what is being said about me doing this to get back at my husband, that's not true.
I think that the medication and the alcohol had a lot to do with the decision that she made at that moment. And I think that was affected in her judgment and as far as the children being hurt in this situation. So I think that she's responsible, but there are others as well. So
I can't just think about my children, how beautiful they were. and sweet and loving. You know, I can't think of them just in the way a mother thinks of their children, because when I think of them, I also think that they're dead, and that they're dead because of me.
Let me know what y'all think, please. You guys, leave me comments. Please like, subscribe, do all that stuff they always tell you to do, because, you know, it doesn't cost you anything, but it helps me out a ton, and I really, really, really would appreciate it. Please let me know what y'all think of my first video. I love y'all, love y'all, love y'all, and I hope it wasn't boring, and I hope it wasn't too long. And if you have any questions or requests, holla, let me know. I love y'all. Take care, y'all. Have a good week.